Principal Arthur Finch, during his slick school board presentation, dismissed Mary's 2 decades of dedicated teaching with a condescending chuckle, calling her methods quaint. Frank felt the blood drain from his face, Mary exposed and silently seething in the front row. Finch merely smirked, surveying the room with a conqueror's gaze. Our life together, Mary's and mine, had always been a quiet hum in this Midwestern town, a steady rhythm of predictable days. The old farmhouse, just outside the city limits, held the scent of aged wood and whatever Mary had baked that afternoon. Evenings were for reading, for the news, for talk that rarely veered into anything urgent. Mary taught English at Roosevelt High, had for 20 years. Her classroom was a second home, filled with books, the worn desks, the faces of teenagers learning how words could carry weight. She believed in those kids, in the structure of a sentence, the power of a well-told story. Her dedication wasn't a job, it was the grain of her being. Then Arthur Finch arrived. He was new blood, fresh from some administrative post downstate, brought in to modernize Roosevelt. He had the kind of looks they called Kennedy handsome, sharp suit, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But beneath the polished veneer, Frank sensed the ethics of a used car salesman, always angling for the better deal, always looking for a weakness. The school shifted, imperceptibly at first, like old house settling. A new coat of paint here, a shuffled schedule there. Changes that seemed small on their own, but together they began to warp the familiar landscape. One Tuesday, the light was fading outside, painting the kitchen windows orange when Mary's car crunched gravel in the drive. I heard the door open and close, but no usual greeting. No clatter of her keys in the bowl by the door. She walked into the kitchen, a shadow against the dying light. Her hair, usually neat in a sensible bun, had strands escaping around her face. Her blouse was wrinkled, pulled askew. She looked like she'd been through a windstorm, and not the kind that blows through cornfields. Without a word, she moved to the liquor cabinet, a place usually reserved for holiday toasts or the occasional celebratory gin and tonic. She poured 3 fingers of whiskey into a heavy tumbler, ignoring the ice bucket. It was a rare, telling act. I watched her, the silence stretching. The clock on the stove ticked loud enough to fill the room. The smell of the evening meal I prepared still hung in the air, but my appetite had vanished. She took a slow sip, her shoulders slumped. The glass clinked against her teeth. "Mary," I started, my voice careful. "What happened?" She put the glass down on the counter, a faint ring appearing on the polished wood. Her gaze met mine, but it seemed to look through me, not at me. Her voice, when it came, was hollow, stripped bare. "Finch offered me the department head position." The words hung there, seemingly harmless. Department head, a promotion, after all these years. It was what she'd quietly worked towards, what she deserved. I nodded, a faint smile starting to form on my face. That's good, isn't it?" She gave a small, humorless laugh, a sound that grated. "He said it came with a team-building exercise." She picked up the glass again, her knuckles white. "A weekend at his lake house. Just the 2 of us." The air in the kitchen went cold. The scent of cooking vanished. My blood felt like ice water in my veins. The image of Finch's slick smile, his eyes that never quite met yours, solidified in my mind. The man was a predator, pure and simple. A quiet fury began to build in my chest, a physical pressure. "You said no, didn't you?" The question was more a statement, a desperate hope. Mary took another long drink, her throat working hard. Her voice, when it returned, was a strained whisper, cracking slightly on the edges. "I told him it was inappropriate, that I had plans." She looked at me then, truly looked at me. He looked at me like I was insane, like I just refused a gift from God himself. I wanted to move, to call him, to drive to that school and put my fist through his polished veneer. The anger was a hot, sharp thing, demanding action. "I'll go to the board. I'll make him pay for this." But Mary reached out, her hand finding my arm, gripping it with surprising strength. Her eyes were wide, a silent plea in their depths. "Don't, please don't make it worse." Her voice was barely audible. "I just want to lay low, hope he moves on, forgets it." I looked at her, truly looked at the fear etched into her face, the tremor in her hand, the empty space where her usual composure had been. And in that moment, I knew. Arthur Finch wasn't the kind of man to move on. He was the kind of man who punished. 3 days later, the quiet tension in the house snapped. It was Friday afternoon. Mary was in the small office we'd set up in the spare room, checking school emails on her old desktop. I was in the kitchen, rinsing out coffee mugs. The sudden, sharp intake of her breath pulled my attention. I walked to the doorway. Mary sat rigid in her chair, her back to me, shoulders tight. The blue light from the monitor reflected in the dark glass of the window behind her. I could see the screen from where I stood. The subject line glared, regarding your alleged inappropriate student relationship. My stomach dropped. I moved closer, reading over her shoulder. The email was terse, official, signed by Arthur Finch himself. It cited a school policy violation, a complaint filed, and the immediate scheduling of a disciplinary meeting. "This is insane," I mumbled, the words feeling too small, too weak against the cold digital accusation. Mary didn't turn. Her voice was flat, hollow, the way it had been the other night. "It's about Billy Peterson." Billy Peterson, the name clicked in my memory. He was a junior, quiet kid, smart but lost. Mary had taken him under her wing earlier in the year. His family situation was rough. I remembered her telling me, no real support at home. She'd spent hours with him after school, helping him sort through college applications, polishing his essays. He had a knack for history, a good head for numbers, but he froze when it came to writing about himself. Sometimes when the study sessions ran late, she'd drive him home herself, dropping him off on the edge of town, near the old mill, before the streetlights ran out. A simple kindness, a teacher's genuine effort. Now they were twisting it. The email stated the meeting was set for Monday morning, first thing. The weekend stretched before us, an empty, anxious chasm. Mary barely slept. I could hear her pacing the floorboards above our bedroom, a soft, relentless creak. Sometimes in the dead of night, she'd stir beside me, muttering half-formed arguments, whispered defenses against an unseen accuser. Her sleep was a fractured thing, a fragile glass that splintered at the slightest sound. I'd lie there listening to the clock tick, feeling the weight of the accusations settling over our house. Sunday evening, as the last light drained from the sky, casting long shadows across the living room, Mary sat on the couch staring at the muted television. I sat next to her, not touching, just present. "I'm coming with you," I said, breaking the silence. She shook her head, not looking at me. "It's a closed meeting," Finch said. "Just me, him, and Mrs. Henderson from HR." "Then I'll wait outside," I told her, my voice steady, firm. "I'll be in the hallway. You're not facing this alone." I knew she needed to hear it, even if she couldn't say it herself. She finally looked at me, her eyes tired, but a flicker of something, maybe relief, passed through them. Monday morning arrived, cold and gray. I called in sick to the plant, telling old Mr. Henderson in shipping that I had a stomach bug. It wasn't entirely untrue, my stomach was churning. Mary dressed carefully, her usual beige skirt and a pressed blue blouse, as if preparing for a regular day, but her movements were slow, deliberate. We drove to Roosevelt High in silence. The familiar brick building, usually bustling with students and the distant echo of a bell, seemed different, stark, institutional. The parking lot was mostly empty, save for a few cars, dark and uninviting. The entrance, usually a welcoming threshold, felt like the mouth of a cold, indifferent machine. We parked near the front door. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves. I leaned over, placed a kiss on her forehead. Her skin felt cool beneath my lips. I tasted the faint, sharp flavor of nervous mint on her breath. "Remember who you are, Mary," I whispered, my voice rough. "They can't take that away from you." She nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement, and then she pushed open the heavy glass door, stepping into the dim hallway. 2 hours. 2 hours I sat on a hard plastic chair in the deserted hallway, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the air cold and stale. Each minute stretched, became an eternity. I watched the clock above the drinking fountain, the second hand sweeping in slow, deliberate arcs. The silence in the hallway was punctuated only by the distant sounds of a bell or a door closing, echoing through the empty corridors. I thought of Marion there facing whatever lies Finch had concocted. I thought of Billy Peterson, a quiet boy, now a pawn in a game he likely didn't understand. Then the door to the principal's office opened. Mary stepped out. She looked shell-shocked. Her face was stark white, drained of all color, as if she'd seen a ghost. Her knuckles, clutching a thin manila folder to her chest, were bone white. Her shoulders were hunched, her gaze fixed somewhere on the linoleum floor. She didn't see me at first, just walked mechanically. I stood up, walked to her, and gently guided her to a hard wooden bench against the wall. The rough grain of the wood pressed against my hand as I helped her sit. "What happened?" I asked, my voice low, trying to keep it steady. She didn't answer immediately. Her hands trembled as she loosened her grip on the folder, her fingers fumbling with the clasp. They have statements," she whispered, her voice barely audible, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. She opened the folder, pushing it onto my lap. Inside were several stapled sheets of paper, official-looking, with the school's letterhead. Each one was a typed statement, allegedly from students. They claimed to have witnessed Mary engaging in inappropriate physical contact with Billy Peterson. Vague accusations of lingering touches, overfamiliarity, subtle favoritism. The language was carefully chosen, just ambiguous enough to be damning. Beneath the statements were printed screenshots of text messages. My eyes scanned the small, distorted images. Disgusting, suggestive, manipulative messages. They were from an unknown number, but clearly designed to look like they could have been sent by a teacher, by Mary. They talked about secret meetings, special favors, and a strange, unhealthy dependency. My jaw tightened, my hands clenched around the folder. "These are fabricated," I said, my voice cold, flat. "This is a setup. We can prove they're fake. We can get phone records, show they're not from your number." Mary looked at me then, her eyes full of a profound desperation that made my chest ache. "It's my word against these witnesses, Frank, against these printouts." She gestured vaguely at the papers. Finch said they were credible reports, that my behavior with Billy had been flagged by other concerned staff. She paused, taking a ragged breath. "He's opening a formal investigation. Effective immediately, I'm suspended without pay." The words hung in the air, a final heavy blow. Suspended without pay. Her livelihood, her reputation, her entire career, all suspended, held in limbo by a man who sought only to destroy her. It wasn't just harassment anymore. It was calculated destruction. Finch wasn't trying to scare her. He was trying to break her. Something snapped inside me then. I was a man who preferred quiet, who avoided conflict, who sought the path of least resistance. I worked my job. I maintained our home. I lived my life without making waves. But seeing Mary like this, seeing the careful, deliberate way this man was dismantling her, something deep and fundamental shifted. The fear that had been gnawing at me for days gave way to a cold, hard resolve. I reached out, taking her trembling hand in mine. Her skin was cold. My grip was firm. "We're going to fight this," I declared, my voice steady, clear, surprising even myself with its conviction. "And we're going to win." Mary looked at me, skepticism in her tired eyes. "How, Frank?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "He's the principal. He has all the power. He's got the school board wrapped around his finger." I met her gaze, my own eyes unyielding. "He might have power," I said, "but we have something he doesn't, the truth." That night, the house felt too quiet, too still. Mary had gone to bed early, exhausted. I sat at the kitchen table, the yellow light of the overhead fixture stark against the darkness outside. On a legal pad, I started making a list. Potential allies. Teachers who might dislike Finch. Parents who might have concerns about the new principal's methods. Even former administrators who might still have some sway. My pen scratched against the paper, filling the page with names, possibilities, uncertainties. But no matter where my thoughts went, they kept circling back to one name. Billy Peterson. He was the center of it all, the innocent pivot around which Finch's lies revolved. Mary had been firm earlier, her voice tired but unwavering. "We can't involve Billy, Frank. He's got enough troubles at home. He doesn't need to be dragged into this mess." I understood her reasoning. She always put her students first, especially the ones who were struggling. But this wasn't just about protecting Billy from a difficult situation. This was about clearing her name, and his name was being used as the weapon. "Billy's 17, Mary," I countered, my voice low but firm. "He's not 7. He deserves to know his name is being used to destroy your career. He deserves the chance to speak for himself." She hadn't said anything more, just turned away, her silence a heavy weight. I knew I had to do what I felt was right, even if she disagreed. The next day, Mary was on the phone almost constantly, talking to the teachers' union representative, her voice a low murmur from the spare room. I listened to the muffled cadence of her voice for a while, then quietly slipped out. I drove the old Ford into town, heading straight for the diner near the highway, the one where Billy worked part-time after school. It was the kind of place with red vinyl booths, chrome accents, and the smell of grease and coffee hanging perpetually in the air. I pushed open the heavy glass door, the small bell above it jangling. The lunch rush was dying down. A few older couples lingered over coffee. I spotted him near the back, a tall, gangly kid in a clean white uniform shirt, wiping down a table with slow, deliberate movements. His hair was slicked back, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up as I approached, his eyes widening in recognition. "Mr. Davis?" he asked, confusion etched on his face. He put down his rag. "Is Miss Davis sick?" His voice held a genuine note of concern, not just polite inquiry. It was enough. It was all the affirmation I needed. "No, Billy," I said. "She's not sick. I need to talk to you. You got a minute?" He nodded, looking around the near-empty diner, then gestured to a booth in the corner, tucked away behind the jukebox. We slid in, the vinyl sighing beneath our weight. The waitress, a tired woman with a towering beehive, brought us 2 glasses of water without asking. I took a deep breath. "Billy," I started, "you know Miss Davis has been suspended from school, right?" He nodded slowly, his brows knitting together. "Heard some whispers. Nobody really knows what's going on." "She's been suspended," I explained, laying it out plain without embellishment, "because Principal Finch is accusing her of having an inappropriate relationship with a student. With you." Billy's face, usually calm, almost placid, went through a series of rapid changes. First confusion, then a dawning horror. Then his eyes narrowed and a flush of crimson spread across his cheeks. "That's bullshit!" he shouted, his voice cracking, loud enough to draw a glance from the waitress. He immediately lowered his voice, leaning forward, his hands clenched on the table. "That's absolute bullshit, Mr. Davis. Miss Davis has only ever helped me. She's the reason I'm even applying to college, the reason I thought I could get out of here." I met his furious gaze, a knot of quiet satisfaction loosening in my gut. This was it. This was the truth unfiltered. "I believe you, Billy," I said, my voice steady, "but they've got witnesses. They've got statements claiming otherwise." Billy's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on mine. "Who? Who are these witnesses?" I shrugged, the familiar excuse feeling thin even as I voiced it. "Finch says they're anonymous, for student protection," he claims. "Convenient," Billy muttered, a cynical edge to his voice. He took a sip of his water, the ice clinking against the glass. He set it down, a new look of sudden realization dawning on his face. His eyes widened. "Wait, I think I know what this is about." He leaned closer, his voice dropping, though there was no one else close enough to hear. "Finch called me into his office a few weeks ago, before all this blew up. He asked me a bunch of weird questions about Miss Davis." "Weird questions?" I prompted, my mind racing. "Yeah, like how often did we meet after school? Did she ever drive me home? Did she ever text me outside of school stuff?" He recounted the memory, his brow furrowed in concentration. "What did you tell him?" I asked, my voice tight. "I told him the truth, Mr. Davis," Billy insisted. "I told him she helped me with my college essays, that we met maybe 3 times a week. I told him she drove me home twice because my bus pass had run out and it was getting dark, and that she only ever texted me about schoolwork, checking on my essays. Nothing else. Ever." He took a deep breath, his jaw clenching. He kept pushing, though, like he wanted me to say something else. Kept asking if she ever, crossed a line. I told him no every time. Then Billy delivered the crucial piece of information, a ripple in the calm surface of the story. Last week, I was in the hall, and this guy, Cody Miller, he was talking to a couple of his buddies. Cody got suspended a couple weeks ago for weed, and I heard him say that Finch offered to fix his suspension if he'd sign some paper. My heart gave a sharp, hopeful lurch. Cody who? I pressed, leaning further across the table. Cody Miller, Billy repeated. He's in some of my classes. He's failing most of them. Always in trouble. Got caught with weed near the locker rooms a few weeks back. Finch gave him 3 days suspension, said he was lucky it wasn't expulsion. A lead. A real, tangible lead. The first flicker of light in the darkness. Do you think he'd talk to me, Billy, about this paper? Billy hesitated, picking at a loose thread on the vinyl seat. Maybe. He's not Mr. Reliable, you know, but he hates Finch's guts for busting him. Said Finch was a hypocrite, always acting so high and mighty. I need to talk to him, Billy, I confirmed, my resolve hardening. And Billy, I need to know something else. Are you willing to go on record? To tell all this to the school board, if it comes to it? His eyes met mine, and there was no hesitation in their depths. The quiet, shy kid who had struggled with essays was gone, replaced by a fierce conviction. Hell yes, Billy said, his voice firm, unwavering. Miss Davis is the only teacher who ever gave a damn about me. The only one who ever saw something in me. I'm not letting that snake take her down. Not without a fight. This was more than just Mary's fight now. It was Billy's too. It was about right and wrong, about the truth finding its way out, no matter how much dirt someone tried to bury it under. Sometimes life throws you into a situation where costly choices are the only way forward. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Billy had scribbled Cody Miller's address on a diner napkin, 1420 Elm Street, apartment 1B. It was a rundown complex on the very edge of town, 3 stories of faded brick and peeling paint, weeds pushing through cracks in the sidewalk. The kind of place you drove past without a second glance. On the way, I pulled the car over, parked it under a drooping oak tree, and called Mary. Billy just gave me a lead, I told her, my voice low, about Cody Miller. He says Finch tried to get Cody to sign something against you. Be careful, Frank, she warned, her voice tight with concern. If Finch finds out you're digging around, let him find out. I surprised myself with the vehemence in my own reply. Let him sweat a little. The words came out sharper than I intended, fueled by the growing anger and sense of purpose that had settled deep inside me. I pulled into the complex parking lot, past rusted-out cars and overflowing dumpsters. Apartment 1B was on the first floor. The paint on the door was chipped, and the screen door hung slightly ajar. I knocked, the sound hollow. An elderly woman, her face a web of wrinkles, her hair a startling shade of purple, opened the door. She looked tired, her eyes immediately scanning behind me. Brandon's not in trouble again, is he? She asked, her voice raspy. No, ma'am, I said, offering a small, polite smile. My name is Frank Davis. I'm Mary Davis's husband. She's a teacher at Roosevelt High. I need to talk to Cody about something at school. She sighed, a long, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of years of exasperation. Cody, you mean? She stepped aside, opening the door wider. He's in his room, second door on the left. Don't believe everything he tells you, and don't believe everything you have heard about him either. She walked back to a worn armchair in the living room, picking up her knitting without another glance. I walked down a narrow hallway. The air inside the apartment was thick with the faint smell of old cooking and something else, something vaguely sweet. The second door on the left was open a crack. I pushed it wider. Cody Miller was sprawled on his bed, a headset clamped to his ears, engrossed in a video game on a large television screen. His room was a mess of clothes, snack wrappers, and game controllers. He looked up, startled by my presence, yanking off his headset. Who the hell are you? He demanded, his voice edged with defensiveness. I'm Mary Davis's husband, I stated, keeping my voice calm, even. His eyes widened slightly, then a flash of recognition. Oh, look, man, I didn't. He started to stutter, looking uncomfortable. I held up a hand, stopping him. I'm not here to accuse you of anything, Cody. I just wanted to know if Principal Finch asked you to sign a statement about my wife, about Miss Davis getting handsy with Billy Peterson. Cody's shoulders, which had been hunched, visibly relaxed. He ran a hand through his shaggy hair. Yeah, he admitted, his voice quiet. Last week, Finch called me into his office. Said he'd clear my record, make that weed suspension disappear, if I signed some paper about Miss Davis and that brainiac kid, Billy. And did you sign it? I asked, my breath held. Hell no, Cody retorted, looking genuinely offended. He pushed himself up, sitting on the edge of the bed. Miss Davis is cool. She's the only teacher who doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid, like I'm just a problem. Plus, that's just messed up, man. Making up stuff about teachers. A wave of immense gratitude, cold and pure, washed over me. This kid, this unreliable kid, had integrity. He hadn't sold Mary out. Would you be willing to tell someone else what you just told me, Cody? Maybe write it down? Cody hesitated, looking at his hands. Finch would expel me for sure, he said, the words heavy with fear. Not if we get him first, I replied, my voice steady, determined. I pulled the Ford back into our driveway as dusk settled, painting the western sky in bruised purples and grays. The air had a crisp bite to it, hinting at the coming autumn. Inside, the kitchen lights were on, casting a warm glow. I walked in, shedding my jacket, and found Mary at the kitchen table. Across from her sat a middle-aged woman I didn't recognize. Her silver hair cut short, her posture straight. Papers were spread between them, along with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. Frank, Mary said, a touch of relief in her voice. This is Sharon Olson from the Teachers Union. Sharon extended a firm hand. Her grip was strong, her eyes assessing. Mary's told me a bit about what's going on, she said, her voice calm and professional. It's a tough situation. Fighting a principal, especially one with the board's ear, is an uphill battle. She spoke with the practiced caution of someone who had seen too many good people lose these fights. I took a chair at the head of the table, pulling it closer. I think we might have something to change that, I said, my voice steady. Then I laid it all out. I started with Billy Peterson, recounting his genuine concern for Mary, his fury at the accusations. I detailed how Finch had tried to manipulate him weeks ago, fishing for false testimony. I described Billy's unwavering loyalty, how he'd been clear that Mary was the only one who gave a damn about him. Then I moved to Cody Miller. I described the rundown apartment, the weary grandmother. I told him about Cody's admission, how Finch had offered to clear his suspension, to wipe his record clean, in exchange for signing a paper about Mary and Billy. And he refused, I emphasized. He said Miss Davis was cool, that she was the only one who didn't treat him like he was stupid, and that making up stuff about teachers was messed up. As I spoke, Sharon Olson's demeanor shifted. The initial caution in her eyes gave way to intrigue, then a quiet, intense determination. She listened, occasionally nodding, sometimes making a note on a pad in front of her. When I finished, the kitchen was silent for a moment. Sharon steepled her fingers, her gaze fixed on the tabletop. Actual student testimony, she said, her voice thoughtful. Especially from a kid like Cody, who might be considered a reluctant witness, someone with something to lose. That changes everything. She looked up, meeting my eyes, then Mary's. Fabricated evidence, coercion. Those are serious legal implications. Not just for Finch, but potentially for anyone on the board who went along with it, or even the school district itself for turning a blind eye. She then outlined the union's resources, her voice now crisp and assured. We have legal counsel who specialize in these kinds of cases. We have public relations support if this needs to go public. We can demand a formal hearing with the full school board, not just a closed meeting with Finch and HR. We can bring in an outside investigator. Mary, who had been listening intently, her hands clasped tightly on the table, looked at me. A distinct flicker of hope, soft but undeniable, returned to her eyes, softening the exhaustion that had been there for days. It was a fragile thing, but it was there. She saw a path forward. So what do we do? Mary asked, her voice stronger than it had been in days. Sharon pushed her chair back slightly, a determined glint in her eyes. First, she said, we get Billy and Cody's statements in writing, formally witnessed. Then we prepare our case. We strategize exactly how and when we formally present this evidence to the school board, and if necessary, to higher educational authorities. With Sharon Olson leading the charge, the teachers' union officially threw its full weight behind Mary. The strategy shifted. No longer were we merely defending Mary against false claims. We were now on the offensive, pursuing justice against Arthur Finch. Legal documents were drawn up, meticulously detailing Finch's coercive tactics and the fabricated accusations. Billy Peterson and Cody Miller, true to their word, provided sworn statements, their voices clear and compelling in their testimonies. The story, inevitable as a prairie fire, began to leak to the local media. Finch, once the charismatic newcomer, was now painted in a damning light. Parents and former students, stirred by the injustice, rallied around Mary, sharing countless stories of her unwavering dedication and integrity over 2 decades. The school board, caught between a rock and a hard place, faced public outcry and undeniable evidence of Finch's corruption. They were forced to act. Arthur Finch, whose power had once seemed absolute, now watched it crumble under scrutiny. Mary and I, though deeply exhausted by the emotional toll, stood united. The long battle ahead, we knew, would have its own costs. But the true price of Finch's betrayal, both to Mary's career and ultimately to his own, was now undeniable. The quiet, steadfast resolve of ordinary Midwestern folks had faced down a powerful form of corruption, slowly beginning the hard work of restoring a sense of morality and truth. Sharon Olson and the teachers' union moved swiftly. Legal documents detailing Finch's coercive tactics and the fabricated accusations against Mary were prepared, backed by the sworn statements of Billy Peterson and Cody Miller. Their young voices, clear and compelling, laid bare the principal's manipulative plot. The story, once confined to school hallways, soon spilled into local news. Public outcry grew, fueled by parents and former students who came forward with their own accounts of Mary's unwavering dedication. Arthur Finch, who had once appeared untouchable, found his carefully constructed authority crumbling under the weight of scrutiny. The school board, facing the undeniable evidence and mounting public pressure, had no choice but to initiate formal proceedings against him. Mary and Frank, though weary from the fight, stood united. The true cost of Finch's betrayal, which had threatened Mary's career, now encompassed his own swift and public downfall. In the quiet towns of the Midwest, some battles were fought not with grand gestures, but with steadfast resolve and a relentless pursuit of truth.